Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to invite the rest of the council members to mute themselves while Council Member Mankey leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Feel free to say it as you're muted.
Thank you, Mayor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we move on to the agenda items, I'd like to acknowledge our remote meeting format. Proclamation 2028 regarding open public meetings is still in effect. Therefore, this meeting will be held entirely remotely. Public comment will be allowed both in writing or verbally. Sign-up sheets were provided by the City Clerk's office via link from the agenda. The video of this meeting will be streamed live, as well as recorded and available for later viewing on the city's YouTube channel. A call-in number was provided on the meeting agenda for members of the public who wish to call in by phone to listen live to the meeting. If you have called in, we ask that you mute your device so as not to interfere with the meeting. If a participant fails to mute their connection and causes a disruption to the meeting, the connection will be terminated. For our phone-in callers, during staff presentations, staff will make every effort to specify which materials they are referencing so everyone can follow along. At this point, we'll take a moment to take roll call of the council members by position. Please say here when the city clerk calls your name.
Councilmember Zorns?
Here.
Mayor Thompson?
Here.
Councilmember Alderks?
Here.
Councilmember McNeil?
Here.
Councilmember Mankey?
Here.
Councilmember Dorr?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to reiterate some meeting guidelines. For all meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name each time before speaking. Mute your microphone when not speaking. If you are also streaming the live video feed, please turn the sound off as there is a delay. For council, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom or your yellow card when you wish to speak, and I will call on you. Speak clearly and pause frequently. Remember to mute your mic when not speaking. The first item on the agenda is meeting agenda approval. Do we have any changes to tonight's agenda? All right, I would like to add something to tonight's agenda. I would just like to have a conversation about what we would like to do with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I don't know what the rules are, if I need a second and we take a vote, or if we just do that. Paul?
It doesn't have to be formal, but generally, yes.
Cool.
An individual council member can't control the agenda, so it would have to be a motion and then followed by a vote. It can just be raised of hands, though.
Everybody, raise your hands if you would like to do that. All right. Next, we have presentations, reports, and briefings. Do we have public engagement opportunities?
We do. Just one moment, please. Can you see that?
I can. You get to join a Bothell board or commission if you would like. It says make a meaningful difference by joining a Bothell board or commission. I will just warn you that sometimes when you join a board or commission, things get a little out of hand, but we would love to have you serving. The Bothell Bridge Winter Edition. You can see the latest City of Bothell news today by reading the quarterly Bothell Bridge newsletter online at bothellwa.gov/bridge. The URL for boards and commissions is bothellwa.gov/boards. All right, I think next we have Northshore School District updates. It looks like we've got Dree Ralph from the school district to present.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Mayor. I appreciate being here. My name is Dree Ralph, and I'm the Executive Director of Capital Projects and Operations for the district. And today I get to do a brief presentation of 2 levies and a bond that are on the February 8th ballot, and I'll leave a few minutes for questions at the end. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. All right, so approximately every 4 years, we have traditionally come to the voters to request help funding the education of our students in the North Shore School District, and this is no different. This time, we had a lot of help with this process. One of the benefits of Zoom is we were able to have 100 volunteers who helped with our tech levy to come up with the proposal you'll see today that we took to our school board that they approved. And then I worked with 70 community members to come up with our bond recommendations. So we had coverage from all over the district and a lot of coverage from folks from Bothell. And this really kind of exemplifies the fact that as North Shore, we really want to establish a safe and caring community for our 23,400 students, our 3,000 staff members at our 35 schools. Our communities are very supportive with partnerships like you. I know that our superintendent meets regularly with you, and we really appreciate the partnership that we have. Over the last few years, as the pandemic has been part of our world, we've had staff who have really flexed their skills and their time to provide great education to our students through that time. We kept our bus drivers employed. They helped us deliver 288,000 meals to families that need free meals. We ensured that our staff and our students had technology to meet their needs during this time. And that included not only the devices themselves, but 1,900 internet hotspots. As a result, our district has not seen the dramatic decreases in enrollment that other Puget Sound area districts have. Nevertheless, we're not fully funded. We rely on our voter improved funding measures to cover basic things, core positions and core programs, including our special education program. What we're talking about today are replacing expiring levies. They are not new taxes. And the funds for these levies and bonds stay directly in our community. The three that we'll be talking about are the Educational Programs Levy, which we call EP&O for short, the Technology Levy, and then the Capital Bond. One of the beautiful things about this particular bond ask and levy ask is, as you all have seen, your area is growing, and it's growing fairly quickly. As a result, our current tax rate from the previous bond and levies was $3.63. With the growth and increase in assessed value, the proposed tax rate is actually combined tax rate is actually $3.28. So a marked decrease in the tax rate. As part of the EP&O levy, we are looking to generate $265 million, which will enable us to provide nurses to the staffing levels that we currently have, as well as provide elementary school counselors and other classroom supports. It helps fund special education, as I mentioned earlier, but it also helps support those multi-language learners that we have, as well as the students who are advanced and need accelerated learning supports. Beyond the strictly traditional classroom sense, there are things that make a North Shore education great, including activities such as band, orchestra, choir, theater, and athletics. I absolutely love this picture because of a project that you'll hear me talk about in just a minute. When we go into the technology levy, we are requesting $80 million over the next 4 years. This does so much for us as a district. Almost every single piece of technology that you see in the classroom is funded by this levy. Everything from the document cameras that our teachers use, to their audio systems that project their voices, to the actual hardware that our students are using are provided in large part by this levy. The software that's on those devices is also provided by the levy, and that's not only for our students. With over 3,000 employees, the district is one of the largest employers in the area, and that requires us to have things like HR supports or bus routing software or payroll even, and being able to use levy dollars for that keeps the general fund in the classroom even more. It also enables us to train our students and staff, but as several of you have probably experienced over the last couple of years, we also get the chance to train our family to use some of the technology that we send home. One of the great things about such a large community with a lot of tech expertise is they talked a lot about what could be done as far as adaptive technologies in the classroom. So this levy will be able to fund some of that, bringing students up to grade level, and then also having supports for those accelerated students to sometimes take them past grade level. Now we get into what I consider the really fun part. This is the capital projects bond. This is a $425 million bond. And again, our community really led us to a different take for this particular bond. In our 2018 bond, we did a lot of building improvements projects, a lot of fields. We did safety and security updates at all of our schools. But for growth projects, we built the new classroom or the new elementary school at Ruby Bridges, as well as the 30 classroom flexible use building that's on the Skyview Middle School campus and the Canyon Creek Elementary School campus. I got the chance to work with your permitting department on that. It's a very cool building. If you haven't had a chance to see it, you should take a look. Last but not least, we are just finishing the Northshore Concert Hall at Inglemoor High School. I'm very pleased to say we have a temporary certificate of occupancy. We expect to have the full certificate of occupancy by the end of the month. We were just waiting for the chairs for the concert hall to get out of the port in Los Angeles and make their way to us. I'm pleased to say they started arriving on Friday, so we should make that end of the month deadline. And hopefully all of you will get some time to spend at that facility to see your students and other community members perform. But as I mentioned, we really took a different take for this bond cycle. The community volunteers really wanted to focus on bringing the buildings that we already have built up to a similar standard of our new buildings. So we're focusing all of the bond dollars on our existing infrastructure for this bond, which will enable us to reduce the need for portable classrooms. In fact, with all of the projects we're proposing, which I'll show you in just a second, we plan to reduce the portables by 70 and add 110 classrooms across the district. This allows for growth in an infill kind of way. As the city of Bothell, you know that you're not necessarily growing as big in huge projects, but you're doing a lot of infill development. I know Mr. Catterman and his team are working with your codes a lot to enable that to happen and make it easier to happen. And we want to have the infrastructure for when that gets built. We will continue to work on major building systems as far as elevators, fire protection, etc. We'll continue to work on fields and upgrades to security. But the big projects, you'll see that they have the raspberry dot in the middle. So there are 5 elementary school projects, Kenmore L, Maywood Hills, Woodin, Crystal Springs, and Fernwood. These are all roughly $30 million projects, which will add capacity and help with modernization at those sites. And then we'll do a phase 1 replacement of Inglemoor High School and Leota Middle School. The rest will be in outdoor learning spaces. We'll be doing some play spaces that are accessible to all of our students, as well as some field improvements, including Pop Keeney will get an upgrade this cycle. This is kind of focuses in on those specific projects. So again, there is a tax rate decrease from the current to the projected tax rates, and those may continue to go down if building continues and we have additional growth, or as assessed value continues to increase. The levies require a 50% plus one for passage. The bond requires a supermajority of 60%. It's the one that always makes me a little nervous. So we really encourage people to vote. It does require, for validation of the bond, to have 40% of the number of ballots that were cast in the November election to be cast in this election as well. So we're expecting ballots to arrive to you and your fellow Bothell families probably this week, and then the voting deadline is February 8th. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and answer any questions that you might have. I realize that was a lot of information in a very short amount of time. Councilman Doerr.
Councilwoman, thank you very much. Sorry, I just had to say it.
I work in the construction field. I really should not have been the one to make that mistake. As one who gets Mr. Ralph all the time, I apologize.
No worries. I just wanted to, I don't really have a question, but I'm happy to see that Inglemore is up for a much needed improvement. That poor school. The only downside is my daughter will have left by the time that any of those improvements are made. But yeah, I totally support making some upgrades at that school and some others within the district. So thank you.
Councilmember Zorns.
Substituting, I swear, every time I come in September, new portables have sprouted up, and everyone who is either teaching in a portable or is a student in a portable is working hard to build community, because those portables make you feel a little ostracized. So every time I step into a portable, they've done a good job. But Mike, and Leota, love the staff, love the kids. It feels like a prison inside that school with very little window space. So the fact that it's on the radar to get some love, I'm very appreciative for the kids and the staff that call Leota home.
Yes, both Inglemore and Leota are actually phase one replacements. So we'll be designing a replacement for the entire campus, but we'll be building the first half of it with this bond. Okay. So Leota's a $60 million project and Inglemore is actually a $100 million project, which is kind of shocking that you only get half a school for $100 million, but
why not?
It is the realm that we're in.
I do have to tell you that flex space over at Skyview is great.
Isn't it great?
Genius. Whoever thought of that should give themselves a pat on the back, because that was
I agree. It was actually my first project when I came to the district, but it had already been designed and I thought it was brilliant.
Yes. Yeah. So one quick question. The hope is to go down by 70 portables. What is the head count on portables that we've got right now?
So that's about 35% of our overall portable population.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah, so we still have a ways to go, but what we'll be able to do with some of those portables that we're removing, we'll likely relocate them to take the place of some of our oldest portables if they're in better shape. But hopefully in the next bond cycle, we'll be able to reduce even more. It really is a goal of the bond planning task force to reduce our number of portables.
I'm so glad that you said it's to replace shabbier portables, because I thought, we're adding more, taking but adding. So thank you for that clarification. And thanks for the presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for the presentation. Great news on taxes. Anytime taxes can go down, that's great. however I asked the question, I'm just curious, what happens if the price of construction starts to drop, or we get into a really bad spot with valuations?
It's a good question. We don't really, this is only a 4-year bond, so it would take an exceptionally fast change to see that over the next 4 years. But if it happens, we will adjust as needed, either direction. But all evidence suggests that that likely won't be the case over the next 4 years.
Okay. And then with the new capacity, with the improvements with the new capacity, is there plans to do any new lines or redrawing, redistricting the area at all?
Not currently, because most of the buildings we're replacing their portables, right? So district-wide, we're only adding 40 classrooms to that total of about 8 buildings that we're touching. So it's not a huge number of adds at any one building. We always do look at districting as a way to take care of growth if we have significant growth somewhere, but these projects themselves should not lead to that. It really is to focus on the reduction of portables.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you.
Councilmember Mankey.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I'm a product of Northshore Schools, and I really appreciate seeing the hard work that you're doing. I was at Crystal Springs 30 years ago, and even back then, we had portables. We had many portables. So yes. I appreciate the work on building real classrooms to build community. I think it's really important. Just out of curiosity, is any of the bond money going to new schooling, or is that based mostly off of funds the district receives from the state and impact fees from new development?
So in the past bonds, it has gone to build new schools. One of the things that we saw during this pandemic is we've had growth, but it hasn't been as explosive. And as a result, we're really taking advantage of this particular 4-year bond to focus on our existing infrastructure. It's likely in future bond cycles, we will be doing new buildings. Impact fees are great, but they don't really provide enough to build the whole new school. In fact, we know that they're 50% discounted from what it takes to house a student. So we can build them up over time and then do a large project, which we have been able to do this last year in building Innovation Lab High School, which is an amazing adaptive reuse program here in Bothell that was a great use of those particular funds. But we had built them up over a course of almost 10 years to do that one school. And there will be pressure to build an additional middle school, at least in the north part of the county, and potentially a little more high school space and spaces.
Thanks so much.
Councilmember Alders.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for the presentation, Dree. This was, it's really great to see how especially portables can be reduced and to hear about the tremendous effort of members of our community to come together and create this plan. You brought up my #1 question, which is about that middle school. And potential siting for that. I know that a lot of members of the West Hill community have questions about a property that was purchased, we believe, by the school district. And so could you share some more information about that?
I can. So we have kind of 2 larger pieces of property, well, I guess 3 pieces of property that are vacant right now. The middle school is anticipated to be built adjacent to Ruby Bridges Elementary School. That piece of property was built to do both of those projects. But as you know, property is in short supply around our area. So we did by the Wellington Hills Golf Course, which I believe is the piece of property you're talking about with the West Hill folks. And we don't currently have plans to build on that site. Over time, that might be developed. We did go through a process with the neighborhood that we agreed to do an EIS process so that they can have a lot of conversation about access to that parcel, as well as what the building will look like. But currently, we don't have any plans for that site. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, hey, thank you for coming. And it's funny, my first job was at the Wellington Hills Golf Course.
Was it really?
So, yeah, and now you own that property.
We do. Do you have any questions, Mayor? I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, I would just
Okay.
remind the council that as a body, historically, we do not endorse this type of why can't I think of the word? This type of thing that goes out to elections.
Ballot measure.
Thank you, City Attorney. But I know that they're looking for folks to endorse that in their personal capacity. So if you want to get in touch with the school district, I'm sure they'd appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have the city manager recruitment process review. And it looks like we've got Matt Pruitt and Heather Gantz to present.
Hi, Mayor. I think Heather is walking. There she is. So we have our wonderful consultant, Heather Gantz, to talk to you about the city manager recruitment process and get feedback from you on the stuff that you talked about last week. And so hopefully we can get this thing out and announced soon here, the week of the 24th at the latest.
Great. Good evening, everybody. It's great to see you all again. We're back to discuss the brochure in greater detail. We've received 2 comments in writing that I'll bring forward for consideration, and then any additional thoughts that you have as you've had the chance to review and think a bit more about any changes and or updates that we need to make to our original document. The first suggestion that we had was from Councillor Alcabra, which was in the priorities section of the brochure, and Matt can bring it up if we need to screen share, if that would be helpful. So just either raise your flags, your fingers, your hands, nod if you want us to bring it up so you can see. This in particular is with reference to the 5th bullet. The bullet originally read, take the necessary time to learn and understand the Bothell community, intentionally build connections, encourage diverse perspectives, support authentic engagement, provide transparent communication, and ensure the city remains connected to the community at all levels. Looking to adjust that particular bullet to read, take the necessary time to learn and understand the Bothell community, especially Bothell's communities of color, including our immigrants, and then continuing with the sentence. So 5th bullet down, the one that starts with take the necessary time is the one we're talking about. And again, adding especially Bothell's communities of color, including immigrants. Councillor Alcabra, did I catch it all?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Any particular thoughts on that from the group? Not seeing any hesitations. Is that correct, Mayor?
I am scrolling up and down and
okay.
I don't see any hands.
Great. So we'll go ahead and make that adjustment. The other one was from you, Mayor. I will paraphrase a little bit and get to the gist, I think, of what you were looking for, and maybe feel free to expand with the group. I think this might very well be something that we could add to the successful candidate section, but something to the effect of looking for a city manager that values fresh solutions to some of The city's most pressing issues would be a great sentence to add in addition to this particular section, maybe in that first paragraph, but certainly open to suggestions. And Mayor, feel free to expand upon that if you'd like.
Yeah, I had something written down that I don't have in front of me at this moment, but basically what I wanted to get to is to look to a city manager that has some of the same preconceptions that we do and some of the same ideas and the directions that we're looking to go as a council. I had mentioned the organization Strong Towns, Congress for the New Urbanism. I would love to have a city manager that's at least conversant in those topics and just kind of knows where we're coming from on some of those issues.
Thoughts from the council on that? Councilor Durr, I think you had your hand up as I quickly saw,
Yeah.
and
I lost my card.
that's okay.
No, I think it makes sense. I mean, we've hired Urban 3 to do a study. So the more knowledgeable city manager is about the direction that we're looking at, the better. And we don't have to get them up to speed.
Great. I think I had Councilor
there-
Zorns.
Did you call me?
I did.
Okay. I like the operative word conversant. I'm one of those people that likes to pick and choose off of a plate of people who have good ideas, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to take all your ideas. So, like, for example, Strong Towns, I think they have some great ideas, but I don't want to just do everything to look like rubber stamp what Strong Towns does, because we're Bothell. We have our own peculiarities. So I like the word now too many syllables and not enough caffeine. Be able to talk about some of these thoughts because and perspectives, because they are things that definitely interest all of council on, but conversant is a good word to be using.
We're not looking to hire the book. It's cool.
Thank you.
What I had originally wrote down is Bothell is a suburban city dealing with many of the same challenges similar cities see our nation over. We value the work and input of organizations like Strong Towns and Congress for the New Urbanism. Our leaders value fresh solutions to some of our most pressing issues. If you have the color of law and walkable city on your bookshelf, we'd like to talk with you. If you rode your bike to pick them up from the library, we'd love to talk with you. So it was value the work and input of.
Anyone have any additional thoughts on that?
Councilmember McNeil?
Thank you. Yeah, so can you just real quickly clarify, that was a lot that you read, Mayor, just clarify what we're adding?
Yeah, do you want me to read it again? Or
no, are we actually adding that entirely?
We would be adding that to the section that I had up before I closed it to look that up. The priorities, was it, Heather?
I think we were looking at potentially adding this into the successful candidate. Yeah.
Okay, and the successful candidate portion.
Yes, correct.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I'm not seeing anyone, but I'm seeing with the screen share got little boxes off to the right. So
I am not seeing anybody else either.
Great. Any additional comments, thoughts, changes, or additions that we haven't talked about yet that you'd like to see in the brochure? The other thing that we'll be updating, of course, is the date to apply. We'll be updating that information. The compensation has adjusted with the new year, so we'll update that information. Matt's given me that detail. Anything else?
And we talked through timeline last time. I'm sorry, Councilmember Alders.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a dog that is whining at me. And so I had to delay my hand raise just a minute. I think he's distracted now. And is this an appropriate time to bring up places where we can maybe off the beaten path to share this announcement and to get the word out? And one outlet in particular that I wanted to call attention to was idealist.org.
Mm-hmm.
As a place where job listings can be posted. And perhaps you're already there and already doing it, but just would love to know that that's included in your job search as well.
Absolutely, we can certainly do that.
Yeah, I'm very aware of Idealist. We use it all the time for city positions that are kind of more of a mission-oriented nature. It's a website we use often. We can add that one for sure.
The other thing with regards to the timeline, we heard from all of you last week about doing semifinals on a Saturday. So if we originally had the 17th and 18th of March, looking at the 19th now, which is a Saturday. So I wanted to be able to get that date on your radar for Saturday, the 19th for semifinal interviews. We had heard from the group that it would be preferred to do a longer Saturday as opposed to splitting it up over the course of 2 work days. Couple of questions.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you. Yeah, if it's a Saturday event, I may not be able to attend from prior engagements of coaching.
Okay.
Will you get the schedule for that? I guess when would you know what your schedule looks like and be able to confirm that would work or not for you?
I should be able to. Would this be an all day starting at what time in the morning meeting?
We hadn't set the time yet, and it would depend on how many candidates we're interviewing. The last time we did them in 45-minute increments for interviews, and we did them on the hour. So if we had 6, 7, 8 candidates, that we'd be looking at a full day more than likely.
Okay. I will see what I can do to adjust.
Councilmember Alders.
My request is that either the 12th or the 26th would work better for my work schedule. Not to say that I couldn't adjust my work schedule, but if one of those other Saturdays is an option, I would jump at the chance.
3/12 would be cutting it a little tight because we'll be making determinations in a council meeting on the 8th. So that's a relatively quick turnaround for candidates and organization. We could push to the 26th, but that would also require us to bump the final interviews. And we know that we were targeting the 4th and the 5th because the following week in April is the spring break week for you all in the school district. So trying to be cognizant of not requiring interviews when there could very well be either some of you out with spring break and or quite honestly, in addition to you all staff that wouldn't be able to participate in the interviews.
I see Councilmember Zorns. I think you have a yes. Yeah.
Got to go for the right box. I'm just going to toss out that we consider moving back to a late afternoon into evening, broken into 2 days. Ruminate on that, because there is some merit in breaking it up and being able to digest the candidates in batches, especially if you're talking about 8 to 10 candidates. I found it very helpful to have some time in between digesting the candidates. So Saturday, great. Late afternoon, evening also might be. I'm hearing people with weekend conflicts. Maybe we have to go back to plan A.
Councilmember Dewar?
I guess I would recommend one afternoon and one Saturday portion because everyone, everyone's got conflicts and people have jobs during the week. And so maybe the compromise is we do one afternoon during the week and one afternoon or morning and on the weekend.
What would be if we did look at an afternoon, either say we stuck with the 19th just for sake of dates. If we looked at either the afternoon of the 17th, which is a Thursday, and then the morning of Saturday, what would be the time we could start in the afternoon? 4. I'm reading your lips, Councilor Zorns.
4 would be great for me.
Okay.
I see nods.
Hey, Heather.
Yeah.
I would also.
Oh, sorry, Matt.
I apologize, Mayor. I just wanted to jump on this real quick. For Councilmember McNeil's purposes on Saturdays, do mornings or afternoons make a difference, or does it matter?
Great question.
If I know what we're going to do, I can rearrange my schedule I just need to know what we're going to do and I can rearrange it.
Did you have a question, Councilmember Aldrich?
A request, if we're doing an afternoon, a 4:30 start time would be better for me than 4 o'clock.
We're getting there.
So potentially a 4:30 afternoon start, and then going into maybe the early evening, maybe not late evening, particularly if we have candidates in different time zones. A later evening for us would be really evening hours for somebody in the central or east time zones. And then I like the idea of a Saturday morning, particularly if Councilor McNeil, if that would work with your coaching schedule, because we could engage in conversations, make some determinations, and then you all could have the remainder of your weekend. Okay.
I see nods.
Great. Anything else? Matt, did I miss anything? Nope. Matt's shaking his head no too.
All right.
So these are my, go ahead.
There was one thing. Heather and I were kind of going over the conversation from last week, and we had talked about the public forum a little bit, and I wanted just to make sure that we heard what we heard. What I heard is that when it comes to the community forum that we held virtually, that we had the last time, that if we can make an opportunity for more interaction directly, we might allow the public to maybe ask some questions, that would be preferred. And then we offered the opportunity to maybe not have a community forum, but instead do it like a community panel where we're select members from the community to sort of sit on a panel, like a third panel. And we didn't really get a strong sense if you guys preferred either way, and what you thought about that, or if maybe you're indifferent and either method works. We just wanted to make sure.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for reminding us and bringing this up, Matt. The more community engagement so the panel idea is a good idea, having select members. The question is, how are you going to select those people? The thing that might be compromise, you can moderate, or Heather can be a moderator, and you can have the questions, because in Zoom you can allow to only send to host, like no everybody chats, so they can send you the questions and you can moderate and ask those questions of the candidates, and that way people will have, at least they can ask the question. Whether we get to it or not, it's a separate topic, and maybe you can even aggregate questions into one topic and you can ask that topic. That way you can have more participation instead of just a few people who we select.
So are you kind of thinking similar to the format of what maybe the council candidate forum was this last year with the gentleman, I can't remember his name, who
Eric Murray, yeah.
Yeah, is
Dr.
that
Murray. Dr. Murray, the questions were sent ahead of time, but I'm thinking in real time. I mean, have real time questions come in only to you and Heather, since you're the host and co-host. That way you can figure out what topics you want to ask the candidates if the questions you haven't asked the questions or we haven't asked them.
We've done that successfully, Deputy Mayor, with other communities where we've taken questions in real time through the Q&A function with webinar and been able to either ask that particular question, or if there's some themes or so, that are coming through, kind of reword and restructure the questions to get at those, particularly in ones where there's several questions, but they're all pertaining to the same topic area.
I think we can pull that off.
Yeah, I think so too. Absolutely. Great. These are minor modifications to the brochure, so I would anticipate that we'll have an updated version tomorrow. So we should be able to get this posted and be live tomorrow with maybe a few remaining ads on Thursday. So for certain, by the end of the week, we'll be sure to get that information out to you if you'd like to share it with your networks and those folks. And of course, working with Matt to get it posted on the city's website and other channels. I've made the note to ensure that we include Idealist, and looking forward to continuing to keep you all informed as we navigate the process.
Fantastic. Heather, thank you so much. Matt,
Great.
Thank you as well.
Have a great evening, everybody. Take care.
All right. I think next up is we have a legislative update in our interim city manager report. Interim city manager, I think you're going to take it from here.
I am. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. So this evening, I would like to introduce Katherine Jansen. She is the Executive Assistant to the City Manager, and she will be providing the weekly or at every council meeting legislative updates to you during this legislative session. So I will hand it over to Katherine.
Hey, thank you, Erin, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm super excited to be the person to provide these updates every week. I'm kind of a legislative nerd. Really sad that with COVID, we don't get to go down there and walk the hallways and talk to people, but that's coming back. And I'm going to share my screen here briefly. Oops. I have to get back to the beginning. Oops, sorry. Bear with me for a moment here. I practiced this, if you can tell. Okay, legislative update for this week. The legislative session opened January 10th, and it's a short session this year, running 60 consecutive days. It's scheduled to close March 10th and will occur mostly, almost entirely virtually this year, thanks to COVID again. The bills that were being considered in last year's long session, 2021, that were not passed are again up for consideration, as well as new bills that were introduced prior to the session beginning and throughout the first week or two. And there's a lot of bills that's happening fast and furious. We're very thankful to our state lobbyist, Shelley Helder of Gordon Thomas Honeywell, for helping us track everything and let us know when bills go up for hearings or other benchmarks that we need to take action upon them. Pre-session, we were able to meet with our state legislators, and Mayor Thompson, Councilmember Zorns, Shelley Helder, Aaron Lenhart, and I met with Rep. Dewar, Rep. Kloba, and Senator Stanford to discuss this council's top legislative priorities for this session. One of our top legislative priorities is the funding of North Creek Regional Trail Phase 4. We're asking for $600,000 for this project. And staff worked with Shelley Helder this past week to complete the paperwork and file it formally with the legislature. Another top priority is the funding for I-405 to support the deployment of bus rapid transit, specifically improvements through Bothell from SR 522 to SR 527. The governor's proposed transportation budget addresses a $450 million funding gap, and Mayor Thompson testified at a public hearing on January 10th in support of the governor's budget and urging the legislature to identify a funding solution this session. So thank you, Mayor, for taking the time to do that for us. Additionally, a stakeholders letter was sent to the chairs of the House and Senate Transportation Committees. This letter was signed by 23 state legislators, 19 electeds from affected cities and counties, and 7 regional business leaders. Signatories included Bothell's 3 state legislators and Mayor Thompson. And we thank Shelley for her help in coordinating this letter and gathering the signatures. One of our funding requests is $7 million for the widening the Bothell Everett Highway from Reeder Way to 240th. The current transportation budget has limited funding available, so the legislature will need to allocate more funding to the transportation budget for new projects. There is currently a debate regarding the best course to take. Both the House and Senate have ruled out a gas tax increase. However, they disagree whether a one-time transfer from the operating budget or use of ongoing investments would be the best source of funding for transportation. And we will continue to monitor this and let you know. Another priority of the Council, as stated in your adopted legislative policy manual, is support for ongoing state funding for co-responder programs such as radar. On Friday, January 14th, the city signed in favor of Senate Bill 5644, which establishes training for co-responders in order to help develop this workforce. In addition to these, Shelley and staff are following and monitoring bills that deal with police reform, missing middle housing, accessory dwelling units, and much more. It's been pretty fast and furious the first couple weeks. And we will keep our eyes open for any bills that directly or indirectly also cause a funding mandate for the city. So that was my quick update. Do we have any questions?
Councilmember Dewar.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to provide a little more insight into the 405 situation. So Senator Kuderer and myself are sponsoring bills to allow for sales tax deferral on 5 projects on the 405-167 corridor. That would, depending on the amount we took, that would cover part of the $450 million gap. And then Representative Slatter is going to sponsor a Garvey bill bond because just basically as insurance in case things go awry, because currently the governor's budget uses ARPA funds. But as you can imagine, there's lots of competition for money in the transportation budget. And although I think the preferred method would be to use ARPA funds because there's a time constraint on them, and especially our 405 project is pretty close to shovel ready. So obviously the preference would be not to take bonds out or loans, federal grant money. So that's the current plan. So the governor's budget uses mostly ARPA funds. The Senate Transportation Chair does not use ARPA funds so much. And we don't have currently a House proposal for how to fund 405. But I thought I'd let you know that that's sort of where we're at right now with the 405 plans.
Thank you for the update.
Any other questions? I guess not. Awesome. Thank you, Catherine.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have council committee reports. Not everybody all at once. We have Councilmember Aldrichs.
Hello, everyone. I did attend this last week 2 committees, the Coalition on Homelessness, and I sent you notes about the other one, so that's in your email. And one that I was really struck by was the work of NUSA, especially throughout the winter weather that we had. And there were, and this is opportunities for me to learn more about what some of our community partners are doing, and how we as community members can be involved in helping our unhoused neighbors. And one of the things I heard is that there's an opportunity to deliver food during winter shelter times and I'm looking forward to hearing more about that and passing that on to not just the council here, but the community. So I'm looking to have some future conversations with members of NUSA. It's just really exciting to have been involved with the winter shelter when it was part of the interfaith group effort, now become a 24/7 shelter at the Oaks, and just to see how we can continue supporting and encouraging that effort. Really great enthusiasm on that committee for radar and expansion of that program. And so it's just nice to see that at many different levels and different angles that people are working to bring those services to our community members, and just make it more accessible to people. So that's my update. And please check your email and read through the notes for both committees that I sent to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Zorns, did I see you waving your hand earlier? Okay.
Just a real fast update on LTAC. We met today. Both our tourism manager, Danae McGee, and our parks director, Nick Stroop, are really on what it's going to take to drive more tourism, whether it's people here to have fun or businesses coming in, doing business with Canyon Park. How do we get that traffic? And there's some interesting things going on. We talked about what elements, it all depends on funding, but can we bring the community in? There's a hope to bring some of the both arts and our parks people in on those boards to come in and have that conversation of, what's the biggest picture that we can have, and where does everyone's inclinations land. The other last little piece that you might want to know is that they had over 100 applicants for the festival coordinator, all pretty fabulous. 10 of them have gone through, and they all evidently have very impressive resumes on things that we're looking for our festival coordinator. And so by the end of, let me see my notes, by the end of this month, we should have someone figured out. And I thought it was mid-February, but within a month, we're going to have someone identified. And we're going to have 8 Fridays minimum that are going to involve music and art. And I know, music in downtown, and food trucks, bollards. They also have logistics of side barricades, making sure all the outlets work. That's kind of hard to plug things in if we ain't got no power. So there's some places where the rubber is meeting the road, but it's looking good. And 4th of July parade planning is moving forward as well. So hold on tight. Good things are coming.
Thinking about Friday nights in Bothell is like getting me through getting dark at 4:30 p.m. Like I need sunshine, but at least I have that to look forward to. Any other committee reports? I went to the Snohomish County Mayor's meeting with Executive Sommers, and that was mostly around COVID response. There's going to be a FEMA site coming in. There's a new vaccination site. If you're not vaccinated already, please take advantage of that. They are standing up a testing facility as well. There are some, the governor's office gave an update. There are some restrictions on elective surgery that are coming. They're hoping to avoid more of those. And as of last Thursday, they expected the peak for the Omicron wave 10 to 14 days out. So we're coming up on what they would expect to be the peak. We also talked through the 1% for housing and behavioral support that Snohomish County has just passed, thanks to the leadership of their council and Executive Sommers. And then we spent a decent amount of time talking about how nobody's garbage got picked up, regardless of who they had for service, whether it was Republic, Recology, Waste Management, nobody's garbage got picked up. So if you're watching the meeting and you're thinking, I should email my council members because our garbage didn't get picked up, their garbage was also not picked up. All right, and next up in the meeting, we're going to adjourn to executive session regarding potential litigation pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1I, anticipated to last 25 minutes, no action expected. I think that's the last piece I'm supposed to read here. I will see you in executive session.
Recording stopped.
comment. In keeping with Governor Jay Inslee's emergency proclamation 2028 regarding open public meetings, the city has accepted visitor comment in writing as well as accepted sign-up sheets for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all city council members and are part of the record. City clerk, do we have any visitor comment? Nope. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Councilmember Dewar?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
And do I have a second? All right, I saw Councilmember Zorns, and I think just waving's probably fine, isn't it? Cool. All right. Laura?
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns,
Yes.
Mayor Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Alders,
Yes.
Councilmember McNeil,
Yes.
Councilmember Menke, Councilmember Menke, you're muted.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Dorr,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra,
Yes.
passes 7-0.
Thank you. Moving on to Agenda Bill 22006, the third quarter 2021 financial update. Director Bothell, I believe, is here to present this item to us.
He is coming down the hallway.
Good evening. I'm going to share a presentation. All right, so this is the third quarter 2021 financial update. So in this update, I'm going to provide a description of the period to date revenue and expenditure trends for the third quarter, a number of watch list items or things that we're keeping an eye on in finance, and then a few subsequent events or things that occurred after the end of the quarter. So at the end of the third quarter, collections for all major revenues were consistent with the forecast. We did have 3 smaller revenues that were underperforming at the end of the third quarter. And those were investment interest, telephone utility tax, and cable utility tax. Investment interest, the underperformance there is a result of really low investment yields as a result of the pandemic. Telephone and cable utility tax doesn't have anything to do with the pandemic. This is the result of people cutting the cord. It's a theme that we've been talking about for a number of reports prior to the pandemic. I don't expect that to come back, but fortunately, telephone and cable utility taxes are our 2 smallest utility taxes. And so doesn't have a huge impact on the general fund, but it is something we need to keep an eye on. And overall, the revenue performance is consistent with the adopted budget. Similarly, overall expenditures are consistent with the adopted budget. It's difficult to tell in this biennium exactly where we're going to land because we have forecasted a ramping back up of operations. And so our expenditures will increase as we move through the biennium and get back to normal or whatever the new normal ends up being. But preliminarily, it looks like we are trending towards a modest underspend of the adopted budget, which is good news. So we'll keep a close eye on that and continue to report back to you and let you know how that's going. I have 3 watch list items for you. The first one is investment interest, which I just mentioned is an underperformer. We're keeping a close eye on investment interest right now or investment yields. They've been really, really low during the pandemic and they are starting to increase. So a lot of our investments that we had during the pandemic were called because yields were going so low. And we couldn't reinvest those at a reasonable rate of interest. The rate of interest was like less than 0.25%. We're currently back up around 1%, and I expect that to continue to increase. So we're going to get back into that game, and we will have some better returns on our investments, hopefully in the future. So that underperforming problem that I mentioned a minute ago is likely to correct itself by the end of the biennium. The second watch list item I have is sales tax leakage. Just as a reminder, sales tax leakage is the sales tax that we miss out on to other jurisdictions because we don't have a lot of destination retail. So when our residents leave the city to make purchases outside the city, that's the jurisdiction that they travel to and make that purchase in, they get the sales tax on that. One thing we've seen during the pandemic is a reduction in our historical sales tax leakage rates. And so we've seen really good sales tax collections. And that has continued as things have started to open back up and we're starting to kind of identify what the new normal might look like. We've seen that sales tax leakage stay at a lower rate than we're accustomed to. So we're keeping a close eye on this. It's possible that a lower rate of sales tax leakage could be part of our new normal. So we'll continue to report on that. And then the final watch list item I have is inflation. Everybody's been talking about inflation. We've been talking about it during a lot of quarterly reports. Last week, the published rate of inflation was the highest that we've seen in almost 40 years. But the Fed has committed to taking some action to bring that back down. And so I think, hopefully, the 7% that we just saw was the peak, and we will be headed towards a more reasonable rate of inflation. Hopefully, in the next couple of years, we'll get down closer to the Fed's target of closer to 2%. And a few subsequent events. These are just things that happened after the end of the quarter that I wanted to bring to your attention because I think they're important. The first is that we issued the second round of fire station bonds. So funding for the fire station reconstruction project is all secured, and there's nothing holding us back from finishing those projects. During the project or during the course of issuing those bonds or going to that bond sale, we were re-rated by the credit rating agency Moody's, which has historically done our credit ratings, and they did sustain the AA1 rating again. I never miss an opportunity to say something about this because I think it's a really good demonstration of good financial management that the city council and the administration has been doing for the city. The AA1 rating was a recent upgrade, and so every time they sustain that rating or they confirm that rating, it's kind of exciting because they are independent and they really believe we're doing a great job. So I think that's an exciting thing that I want to bring to your attention. And then the final thing is the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award was won for our 2021-2022 budget book. And that award is just given to local governments that have a budget book, that publish a budget book that is aligned with best practices in communicating the policy decisions of the budget and the financial aspects of the budget in a way that's easy for the community to digest and are, again, aligned with best practices. So that is the third quarter report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councilmember Zorns.
Well, if anything is going to give me heartburn, it's going to be inflation. So I'm grateful that our staff is watching that. Congratulations on the Distinguished Budget Award. Real estate, just eyeballing it, the real estate market seems to be kind of slowing. How might we expect that to manifest itself? Like a few months down the road when REIT comes in, how would we expect that to manifest?
Well, in a couple ways. We'll see that economists are predicting that in March, the Fed's going to raise the borrowing rate. And so that's going to affect interest rates for mortgages, which will affect purchasers' buy power and is likely to cause the current climate where there's the year-over-year increases in home values are really significant. It's likely to cause that to slow down. So transaction value is the basis for the real estate excise tax. And so we're likely to see not as large of jumps in transaction values. I will make an anecdotal comment that I still think Bothell is an extremely hot market. And so I think we're still going to see a lot of transactions. But we use conservative assumptions in our forecast, in the revenue forecast for the budget. And so I think we will, unless it falls off a cliff, and I don't think anybody's predicting that to happen, our budget will be very stable and we'll just have to keep an eye on it. There will be impacts, but I just don't expect it to be a huge impact because I think we're a hot market and a lot of people want to be here. So,
well, that's encouraging to hear. And my last thing that's going to come out of my mouth is our rating. What is the best way we can do to protect that? And where do city councils tend to get tempted to do things that would thwart that rating?
So probably the most important thing is to have good reserves. So Currently, we have really solid reserves, and to maintain those or be mindful of that, I think is something that council could do to make sure that we maintain that rating. Other than that, just good financial management, making sure that the policies make sense, that we're not that our operating costs have a reasonable relationship to our operating revenues or our recurring revenues. Just all the things that you do for good financial management will help to maintain that rating. But I would say that if there's one thing the council could do, it would be to just be thoughtful about, as you budget and think about where you want to spend the money, just be thoughtful about those reserve levels, and that will help a lot.
Okay. And there's a reason why I asked that, is you are jumping ship, and I'm going through Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of death and dying. So best of luck. We are going to miss you terribly, and we appreciate you hugely. So thank you for all that you've done and brought to Bothell.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate the kind words. It's absolutely been my privilege to serve this community and serve all of you. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
Thank you, Mayor. And I would share my, she's been with you a lot longer than I have, but I still been watching for the past couple of years. So I share Deputy, you see, Deputy Mayor Zorn, so thank you so much for serving. I have a question which has 2 parts, and a question that's I've also request. The first question is, you mentioned sales tax leakage. What's the actual number that we have right now, and what's a good number to have, if there's such a thing as a good number? Sales tax leakage.
So there's not a benchmark that's out there. What we could do is take like average household spend on retail goods and figure out what that is relative to the income level, that the average income level in Bothell, and then say per capita our sales tax is this. And we could actually calculate a rate and calculate it relative to other local jurisdictions around us. The easier measure is just to take our population divided by our sales tax collections and kind of figure out what our average rate is compared to others. When we do that calculation, I have to be honest, I haven't done that in a while. We're going to fall like way below median. We could do an analysis on that and kind of figure out what those numbers are and benchmark it. What we know is that during the pandemic, our sales tax receipts, we get some data on sales tax and what industries it's collected in, and retail trade is where online sales are reported. It's also the largest category. And it separates out things like hospitality and construction. So the impacts, the pandemic-related impacts on those categories aren't included. And we know that our retail trade category grew during the pandemic way faster than our population was growing. And so that's how we know it's the thing that primary. We can only assume that it's people shopping from home is the primary driver of that increase. It would be fairly easy for us to actually calculate that, and I apologize, I haven't actually done that.
No problem, which actually leads me to the next question/request. Can we have those financial updates to be actually with numbers and trends and stuff, so we can see how we're doing quarter to quarter, month to month, and so forth? If you have to send it to us separately so that we can review it ahead of time, that would be fine too, but it's good for the public to see numbers also.
Absolutely. And the one kind of thing that complicates that for us is that we don't do a close every month, and we are a gap basis tax, or we are a modified accrual taxpayer. And so what we can't do, we have over $100 million of debt outstanding, and that's presumably being traded on the secondary markets. And so we have to be a little bit careful about giving out too much financial information, but it would be a really great exercise for us to spend some time figuring out what the council and what the community might be interested in seeing, and figuring out how we can navigate that.
Sure. Yeah, let's figure out how we can, mitigate those risks, and while at the same time having more information so that we can really understand the financial picture, right? So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Mankey.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Director Bothell, for the presentation. Just one quick question. I'm sure some folks watching might be wondering what kind of investments we have as a city. Just hoping you could just touch on that real quick.
Absolutely. The types of investments that we're allowed to invest, that we're allowed to get into are mandated by state law. So it's controlled by state statute. It's very prescriptive, and it's primarily other government bonds with certain types of ratings. So really high quality, super high quality government bonds from, we can get into things like the states, we can get into other large municipalities if they have a certain rating. There's a little bit that we can carry of like some corporate bonds and stuff like that, but it has to be less than 10% of your portfolio and that kind of thing. So most of our investment portfolio historically has been in other government bonds that are just highly rated.
That's just to make sure that we're not losing money by holding it in cash, correct?
No, you're exactly right, and the state statute is made that way. We really at all want to, whatever we do, that in the hierarchy of what the considerations are, safety is number one for public funds. So
great, thank you so much, and we're definitely going to miss you. I've enjoyed watching you over the last few years, guiding the council through budget discussions and everything else. So we wish you the best, of course, but it's definitely going to be our loss.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right. Oh, Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Bothell, for the presentation. I remember when you first came here, all the work that went into presenting what you're presenting today is just amazing. We've come a very long way. You will be sorely missed, and thank you for everything you've done and the service you've given to the city of Bothell. We got some big shoes to fill, but I wish you the best of luck where you're going. And sorry to see you go, but I'm hoping you're on to bigger and better things for your future, and we will always miss you. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I will just echo everybody else's thoughts. Thank you for your service and your time here in Bothell. I hope the next step is amazing and really good for you in your career. And we appreciate it. All right. Moving on to our next agenda item. This does not have an agenda bill because this is something I put on the agenda, or we put on the agenda at my request at the beginning of the meeting. And I just wanted to essentially kind of explain what I did last week with the Pledge of Allegiance and just have a conversation around what we might want that to look like moving forward. So before the meeting last week, I asked staff what our options were because I've been dissatisfied about the experience in Zoom, let me just say, and asked if I needed to come back to council for a vote or not. Ended up getting the answer that ultimately it was my call. I made a quick decision not to do it in the run a show right before the meeting. And I obviously didn't read the room very well in my first meeting as mayor. With no explanation or discussion, people will make assumptions, and I shouldn't have given the opportunity for people to do that. So moving on, my beef with the pledge is that we're not in sync. To me, it seems disrespectful. It's sort of like flying a tattered flag, only there's specific rules around that. Additionally, I want to run good meetings, and the way we've done the pledge, it's not that. I've called some friends at neighboring cities, and not one has the entire council recite the pledge together. They do different things. Some of them don't recite the pledge. Some of them alternate which council member recites the pledge each week. Some of them have the mayor recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I want to thank Councilmember Mankey because he reached out to me after the meeting. Just gave me a call and let me know that skipping the pledge didn't land well with everybody. And I think he brought up a really good idea that I think can kind of get everybody what they want. His idea was essentially to have a video of the Pledge of Allegiance played at council meetings. Council members can stay on mute. They can recite the pledge. We can all feel patriotic, but we can do so in a more organized and respectful way. And Councilmember Mankey, thank you for just picking up the phone and giving me a call and chatting it through. I appreciate that. I appreciate your maturity, and I'm glad to have you here. So with that, I will open the floor for discussion. Councilmember or Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
I'm okay with the suggestion. To be totally honest, the pledge is fine. I feel like we have bigger topics to tackle, and I will go with whatever the group decides. Councilmember Mankey's suggestion is perfect. Seems to work for me. What we did this at the beginning of this meeting seems to work too. If Councilmember Mankey is okay with reciting it every single time, that's it. But anyway, so having a single source makes a lot of sense of having the video go all over the place. But whatever we do, I'm okay with.
Thank you. Councilmember Alders.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the process that we came to for this meeting, that there was collaboration and problem solving together. So thank you, Councilmember Mankey, for your suggestions and for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance today. If given a choice between taking turns or having the mayor or somebody among our body reading the pledge and a recorded video, I would appreciate the recorded video, especially, and I've realized this is kind of a quibble, but especially if that flag is flying and waving in the wind. That feels particularly meaningful to me. The still flag today, I felt like there was an element missing. So that is my request.
Councilmember Zorns, did I see you earlier?
No, thank you for bringing this. Some people can have an easy time remembering why they're at the dais. For me, the pledge is like giving thanks. It's remembering that we took an oath to uphold the Constitution, and we are working towards being a more perfect union. We haven't reached perfection yet. So we really, and it's out of respect with what it's taken for us to get there. I like all of the ideas. If there is a leaning to go to a pre-recording and the flag in the wind, let's do that. And anything that council wants on this is great. Take turns, great. Mayor does it, great. Just, keep my mind focused, keep my heart in the right place. I can do it with any of those ways.
Councilmember Dewar.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to agree. I found it pretty disrespectful that we were just a complete ununified bunch of voices. I don't know why it's so easy to do it in unison together, but over Zoom it's pretty darn impossible. And in the legislature, we all turn off our videos and we have a waving flag and the speaker says the pledge. So I think doing something along those lines would be great.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree. I think having the waving flag is great. When we get back on the dais, the flag behind you is not going to be waving, but I think it's a great opportunity to have it. It gives a little motion. There you go, Mayor. I think that I think having one of us, if it's weekly or having the mayor do it, I think I would like to have one of us at least say the pledge. Feels more humanizing to have that piece done. We can all say it silently ourselves off camera, but for some it means a lot, and so I would love the opportunity to at least have somebody say it. And then moving forward and just kind of thinking about this, it was a lot. It was really messy. It did feel like that for me. Since I've been on council for 6 years, I've always said the pledge. It did feel messy since the pandemic hit. But it's the one thing that at the beginning of the council meeting is always consistent. And so it's the one thing to me that it's universal and it's just there for us. So if we could find a way to make it more seem together, I think it would be important for us. And I think it brings us together.
Councilmember Mankey.
Yes, thank you for being open to chatting for discussion. It was a great discussion, and I'm open to any and all options. And I think rotating is fine, but video is fine too. It's not, I don't have a specific preference. So whatever council wants to go with, I'm good with.
Do I have any volunteers for people who want to record themselves saying the pledge to send it to staff for the next meeting? All right, Councilmember McNeil, you're up. You've got a great voice for it too.
Thank you.
All right, interim city manager, is there anything else that you need to see other than we need a flying flag with Council McNeil's dulcet tones over top of it? Can we make that happen?
We will certainly try. If not, we may have the video with Councilmember McNeil's tones live in action until we can figure out how to do that, if that's all right.
That's fine. We'll figure something out. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for the discussion. I appreciate it. All right. Moving on to Agenda Bill 22007, we have the American Rescue Plan update. And it looks like we have Senior Management Analyst Aurora Belli to present this item.
Good evening, council member and mayors. Mayor and council members, let me share my screen here. Alrighty, are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So tonight I'm here to give you a brief update on ARPA. So on October 12th of last year, Council approved initial funding for human services, economic recovery, and city recovery expenses. This evening, I have the pleasure to provide a brief update on what we have accomplished thus far. But before we talk about accomplishments, I'd like to give a little bit of a background just so we all remember kind of where we started. In March of last year, ARPA was signed into law, and the city of Bothell is slated to receive approximately $13.2 million in funding. So we have received half of this money, and it is currently housed in a special revenue fund. As I mentioned in October, the council approved initial funding for the city, which allowed us to actually move forward on some of our projects. During the October meeting, we also talked about our guiding principles, and we decided that at the city, we are committed to working with our community partners to help our community and city recover from the pandemic. Now on to the good stuff. So the first area that I wanted to talk about was what we have accomplished in the human services arena. And we were initially allocated $1 million for this funding. And to date, we have allocated approximately $80,000. Now, as you may remember, in September of last year, the moratorium for utility shutoffs expired. And in an effort to get assistance to our residents as quickly as possible, we started a utility assistance program. The program is available to Bothell residents to assist with water, sewer, and garbage charges that are overdue. To date, we have received approximately 15 inquiries and distributed over $10,000 in assistance. We have also used our human services monies to help restore the domestic violence advocate to full-time status in 2022. And then since the last time that I was here, staff has been busy meeting with our nonprofit partners to discuss current human service needs. We ended up holding multiple follow-up meetings with partners such as the Northshore Senior Center, Northshore Schools Foundation, the Northshore YMCA, Center for Human Services, Friends of Youth, and Kindring. And from those meetings, we are anticipating receiving additional requests for programs or for funding, and they are slowly coming in. One of the most exciting things that we are working on right now is a large partnership with the Center for Human Services. And this could provide additional behavioral health and family support services to Bothell residents. The services could be potentially provided in schools, and we're looking at a dedicated temporary space within Bothell city limits. This would include hiring more therapists, caseworkers, as well as helping to dispense assistance to residents in need. For the economic recovery bucket, we also received a $1 million allocation. And I like to think that we're currently in the exploration phase of this project. The areas that we are really looking into is helping businesses with rent arrears, providing small business education to assist with recovery and resilience. We're looking at joining the Port of Seattle Trusted Community Partners Network. And we are also talking with the Chamber about partnering on multiple opportunities, which would include business grants, a business expo, as well as some workshops for local businesses. For the city administration recovery expenses, back in October, we were allocated an initial allocation of $500,000. And at this point, we have allocated all of those monies. The monies have been allocated to making sure that we have staff available to administer ARPA funding, which is partially where my position comes in. And we also have numerous technology improvements that were funded to support community engagement, as well as the hybrid and remote workforce situation that we are in currently. We know that there will be additional needs within the city, and we will evaluate those internal needs and return to council once we have a better idea of what those are. Just as a reminder, we have not requested any allocation for strategic city investments at this time, because this is something that will be discussed during the capital facilities plan process here in 2022. And then kind of the biggest thing for me, at least over the last week or so, is to date, our ARPA guidance has been based on the interim final rule. And this was the initial guidance that we received, and it was issued to allow time for agencies to submit questions or comments to Treasury. Treasury evaluated all of that feedback and created a final, more comprehensive guidance document. And this document, called the Final Rule, was issued on January 6th. The updated guidance provides broader flexibility and greater simplicity for the city, which is something that is very much appreciated. This final rule is over 400 pages in length. And as you can imagine, being a federal document, it is rather dry reading. So there are a few areas that I would like to highlight. I am still in the process of going through all that, but a few things that I think are important to note at this time is the biggest one that is getting a lot of attention in the updated guidance concerns revenue loss. And this category is one that previously, the way that the interim rule was written, was we were not eligible for revenue loss. And now with the updated guidance, every entity is allowed to, if they choose, take $10 million in revenue loss. And the reason why this is important is because it allows the city to spend this on government services. And so such areas as police or fire, as well as just general government services and even roads. The big thing about this is it really reduces the administrative burden on the city, as the reporting requirements for revenue loss are considerably lower than ARPA like granting documents. It's important to remember that We cannot use the revenue loss dollars for rainy day funds, debt services, or any activity that would conflict with the whole purpose of ARPA. Another area that was a much needed improvement was enhanced definitions. And in the interim guidance, we were given terms like impacted households or disproportionately impacted households without being given concrete examples of what those are. And thankfully, the updated guidance actually gives us concrete examples and numbers to follow, which is enabling entities to provide services to a wider range of individuals or businesses without having to worry about justifying why they should qualify for these federal dollars. So I will continue to read the 400 plus pages of federal guidance, and as we find other things that need to be related to council, I will of course come back and give you some more highlights. So the last slide I have is next steps, and I think this is a great time for staff to check in and affirm that the strategy and overall direction for ARPA is where we want to be still headed. One important thing to consider, I think, is the updated guidance from Treasury. And as always, we are committed to providing council with a quarterly update, as well as coming back to you with any significant items that happen to come up. That concludes my presentation for tonight. Just to let you know, I have asked Jeannie and Becky to be on hand this evening to assist me with any questions that you may have, so that they will be here to help answer some human services as well as business recovery questions. I know somebody has questions.
Councilmember Aldrichs.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Aurora, for that presentation and for your dedicated public service to read a 400-page federal document. That is quite the accomplishment, and I hope somebody treats you when you make it through the rest of that. My question for you is about the rental arrears for businesses. Do we have data on how many businesses were lost in Bothell in the pandemic? Did any, who closed down? What kind of follow-up can there be with those businesses? Not just because they would have back, sometimes, even closing down is expensive, right? And there's debt that can be accrued there. But also, now that maybe the timing didn't work out quite right for ARPA to help, for us to be able to help them, but is there some way to go back and see if there's a chance for them to come back into business? Perhaps, I'm not sure, but and that is all based on the premise that we've lost any business owners in Bothell. So I'm going to let you answer the question first, but I have some thoughts on that, and then also an estimate of how many businesses in Bothell might be needing the rental arrears support.
So the number of businesses that we have lost and closed their doors entirely that I am aware of has been a dry cleaner, a printer, restaurants, and some catering businesses. And I think that's a really great question with regards to because they did close because of COVID, and it's a really great question. Can we go back and help them? I don't know that answer, and so I will explore that later with Aurora. With regards to the number of businesses that need rental arrears, we did a survey in collaboration with the East Side this past summer with regards to the number of businesses that were in need of rental arrears. And it was, I apologize, I don't know the percentage, but I've been doing some follow-up with our businesses here locally to understand what the need is. And the way that the program will be set up, council member, is that the applicant will be the business and the payment will actually go to the landlord or the property owner. And so I have been in discussions with our landowners to understand what their need is. As soon as I have those numbers, then we'll be standing up the program, but I'm still doing a little bit of research on that.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Do we really have no more questions? Deputy Mayor or Councilmember Mankey?
Thank you, Mayor. Question also for Jeannie. For business owners that are struggling still, maybe they're not in rental arrears, but they're working 7 days a week to try to keep those bills current. Are we looking at that at all to see how many of those we have? I asked because I know of one in Canyon Park, and I visit her probably every couple months to see how she's doing. But she's running ragged, and she's doing everything she can to keep the lights on, and she's been struggling for a while. She's been doing it for 2 years. So I know there's others out there. I just don't know how we get a handle on who those folks are. And, I would like to see if we can help them in some way.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for your question. First of all, if you would be kind enough to contact me directly with this business's contact information, if they're willing to have me call them, I would love to see how we can support them and help them remain viable. With regards to the size, when we first distributed grants a year ago, we distributed grants to as many businesses as we could, and it was $5,000 to $10,000 grants. And everybody was very grateful to have that money. What we're hearing now is that businesses do not want to waste their time on applying for a $5,000 or $10,000 grant. So what we're working to do is to create programs that are more meaningful to a broader audience. So it's the technical assistance and the rent arrears, as well as collaborating with the chamber to create programs. We still are in a position where we can have conversations about distributing grant money, but it would have to be a larger dollar amount, and we would not be able to assist as many people. Happy to look at that and bring you back more information, but those are our initial thoughts on that small grants are not, people won't apply for them. It's not worth their time. The larger grants is we just simply don't have enough money to go around to everybody who needs it.
That makes sense. I don't know if there's anything else we can do that's maybe not a direct grant. Maybe it's I know she could use more visibility in terms of advertising, just people knowing that she's there to serve, and it's a service business. So I don't know if there's anything we can do in that regard for some of our businesses that don't want maybe direct assistance, but I'm happy to reach out and pass on her information. I think she would have applied for the first grant if she would have known about it, but she let me know that she hadn't heard about it. So I let her know that I would, keep an ear out before I got elected to council, and I'd like to see if there's anything we can do to help out.
One thing that is always available, whether we have grant money or not, is assistance with our small businesses to help them get technical assistance with marketing and sales, et cetera. So please have her contact me.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
Wrong buttons. I feel like Councilmember Zorns has been waving her thing.
Oh,
and it's been disappearing in the background. So I will yield to her, and then.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Zorns.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you. That's this world doesn't have enough gentlemen. But thank you. I would have been happy to just step in behind you. I was sitting here thinking, how can we make a lease payment a rental issue for our city hall? And I can't think of anything. And it sounds like we can't use anything to help offset our lease payment on our city hall, except to just lighten the load in some of our other burdens on the city as well. Is there? It's considered a debt, isn't it?
Yes, it would be considered a debt.
Doggone it. Okay.
There's
All
plenty
right.
of other areas though that it could be used.
Right. And ultimately that helps stay the whole ship stay afloat. So thank you. And then thank you for what you're doing for our businesses. They, especially being mindful that grant applications for $5,000 and $10,000 is a little burdensome, and finding other meaningful ways to help out. So thank you. That's it.
All right. Deputy Mayor Alcabra, we'll try this again.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few questions. I don't know who the right person I'm going to ask because I'm a newbie, so please excuse the silly questions. I'm going to ask them a few times. The human services, water, sewer, and garbage, there's initial allocation of $1 million, and then it says allocation 80,000 and then the distribution of 10,000. What's the difference between those values?
So what we did, or last time in October, when we had some buckets, if you will. And so human services is one bucket. And at that time we had asked for, and council approved, a $1 million bucket for human services. So we to date have allocated $80,000 approximately. 10,000 of that is monies that have been spent helping people pay their outstanding utility bills. And the other 70,000 roughly is the cost that it's involved with the domestic violence advocate and bringing that position up to full time. And so that's why you see a variance there.
That makes sense. Thank you. Economic recovery, I agree. We need to do more for our small businesses. I wonder if we have a $1 million allocation. I wonder if, I know they're still planning, it's in the planning process, but I wonder if there are any initial thoughts on what the outcomes that we're expecting out of that. You know, you give $20,000, say, and then you're expecting that those businesses to return something to the city, like if there's any thought, and how long is it going to take until we're done with this planning and we actually start distributing funds?
So with regards to our programs with the port for the trusted partnership, community partnership network, and as well as our technical assistance, we'll be working on contracts for those and having our city attorney review those and do the marketing on those. So those won't be for another month or two. It just takes a little time to do the contracts and the marketing. With regards to the rent arrears, that is, again, having our contracts reviewed. And I am not opposed to sending out grants for more money, you know, for larger amounts. The nice thing about the ARPA dollars that we have now is that we don't have to spend them right now. We do have time for planning. So we're really working on being thoughtful and doing and creating a process for this. I am open to suggestions with regards to reaching community members with a larger amount. I have been interviewing businesses. I need to interview more, but I have been interviewing businesses, and one of the questions I ask them is, what is the lasting impact, and what are the impacts of COVID on you now? And the biggest impact I'm hearing is not about the financial impact. It's about changing their employment model, hiring people, as well as being more flexible with schedules and remote work. That's what I'm hearing, as well as the inability to hire employees. So there are people that I've talked to who don't need the rent arrears because they've already paid it back. So we're still in an exploratory stage. That's why we're exploring, but I am open to any suggestions that you might have. The chamber has offered to do a grant distribution. But we're still haven't figured out the details of it. Excuse me.
No worries. I wasn't suggesting to to give anybody large, and I just used that as just an example. My question is, if we decide to help, regardless of how we're going to help, are we expecting anything back as a city, or we're just, we're just going to give away the service and with the give away the service without expectations? And if it's the former, then are we planning on, or what are the how long does it take to do the to determine ROI on this, right? We're talking about economic stuff.
Well, I think the metric that we always have is that our businesses stay open and they travel. And the contracts that we'll be working on, the metrics will be the number of businesses served. And then and primarily the number of businesses served.
Okay. Oh, cool. Thank you. And one last thing about the final thing, the final rule is the revenue loss. I don't quite understand that concept. So how does that fit into the whole picture? I don't get it. I know what it means, the words mean, but I was like, no.
So the revenue loss and how it is beneficial to the city is, with revenue loss, it allows us to use that money for any government service. So for example, we could choose to use that money to pay for the police department. And then the monies that were saved, that we had already budgeted for the police department, could be allocated in another manner. By doing it that way, we wouldn't have, for example, using human services. If we were to take revenue replacement or revenue loss and we were to offset a city expense, let's say it was $100,000, we could then turn around and give grants, human service grants, to agencies. And that money, the color of that money would now be general fund or city monies, not federal monies, which would require less of the human service agency, because they wouldn't have to follow the federal guidance and rules associated with receiving a federal grant. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I like it. I think so. It's really good. I think we can find a lot of uses for $10 million. Right?
Yeah, it would definitely make things easier for anybody who is going to be receiving that money. And to be totally transparent as well, it would make things easier on the city side, because the reporting that we would have to do to use the revenue loss in the city would be much lower than if we were to give the federal monies out.
Thank you. I appreciate it, both Aurora and Jeannie. Thank you.
Councilmember Dewar.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the report. I feel a little bit like I've forgotten how much of the money we've already allocated. So it's hard for me to advocate for one thing or another. I absolutely think that we're doing the right thing, helping with human services and domestic violence advocate and helping local businesses. I'm curious, previous to the pandemic and cutting back the domestic violence advocate to half-time, she was already full-time. And I believe from conversations with the chief, domestic violence has only exploded during the pandemic. And so I'm wondering if we could ask the question of, do we need some sort of temporary part-time expansion of the advocate role, so that we can be sure that we're servicing those vulnerable families and children that have experienced that uptick in domestic violence during these really stressful times. So I don't expect you to answer that now, but that's something that I would be interested in knowing for future conversations.
Sounds good. And I can give you a rough estimate on the monies that we have talked about prior. is just shy of 4 million. So we did the $1 million for human services, the $1 million for economic recovery, for city expenses. Once we throw in some, there was some parks positions that we wanted to bring back, which was 650. And then there's the bollards on Main Street and Festival Street for $1 million. So we're looking at roughly $4 million of the 13.2 that we've said we'd like to kind of spend it in this fashion.
Can I ask another question, Mayor?
Yes.
Are we able, or would we be able to expand this? I'm not saying the rest of council would agree, but expanding, for instance, the pop-up shops. Could we use the money for that? Or would we have to use it for a revenue loss, and then we could use the money for that?
I think it would be much easier to justify the second way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you so much.
Does anybody else feel like it's that scene in The Office where they're like discussing money laundering and they're like trying to explain money laundering to each other? Because that's kind of what I feel like right here.
It's all on the up and up.
All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. I mean, bluntly, I don't either. I think we're going in the right direction on this. I appreciate you coming back and having more to say about this. And I appreciate that we're being careful. One of the things that has made me nervous about this is people see a big chunk of money coming in and everybody wants some of it, and it doesn't last nearly as long as we'd like it to. So I appreciate that we're being careful and that we're being intentional about what we're doing with it. And we're doing some things that we'll get to see some, obviously just help people in need, but some things that we can do some permanent changes that will benefit us over the long term. So thank you.
Thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
All right, moving on. Council conversations.
I just wanted to thank Councilmember Zorns for the really exciting update on the Friday night market plans. It makes my heart sing.
It is pretty exciting, isn't it?
It really
and
is. Yeah.
and I hope LTAC can come next time. Danae, there's some staff conversations that are happening, but she's really working how can we have an effective welcoming magnet here in Bothell and bring more traffic into Bothell.
Well, and one of the things that I think it was during my one-on-one, well, actually it was more like 2-on-1 because Mason and I were grouped together with Aaron, was talking about a way to bring in boards and commissions so that we had more of a team effort going on, and a shared vision. And I got really excited about the ideas of having, parks obviously helping plan with the activity director and getting the music, but also maybe the arts commission. And if we're going to do a theme around a different culture each week, having different arts activities for kids and even for adults that center around something that is particular to the culture that we're highlighting. And I'm not sure, but it seems like it'd be a great opportunity to involve, oftentimes boards and commissions are all kind of going their own way. And I think it would be really exciting for us as a city with our boards and commissions to be kind of working on a group project together.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, so I'm going to just speak as just one member of LTAC. My impression of that committee is that there is genuine interest of some of the topics that we were talking about is not just the Friday night market, but some other aspects of Street Sense, Street Sense, who's our big engine driver on the social media piece, is bringing in parks and arts on effectively reaching out and connecting with people on not just Friday night markets, but other events.
Ooh, and I just had the other idea of, we were talking about how to recruit people into our boards and commissions that we can't otherwise recruit. And if we're reaching out to different ethnic communities to be involved in the Friday night markets, that's another way to get at them and bring them into boards and commissions too.
I think Deputy Mayor Alcabra said last week that he would definitely sit at that table. So,
and the food, we can't forget the food part of the whole vision.
Do I look like I forget food?
I know. I know.
And to put food and music, and I'll just park myself for a while.
Why? Yeah, well, the food.
And if we could have like sales of crafts and art that's also cultural, oh my gosh, it just, my mind's blowing.
Councilmember Aldrich, just go ahead.
Okay, don't want to jump in. So folk dance is a hugely important part of my life throughout my life. And so if there's dancing with the food and the music and the art, I'm there. Like, I will be there anyway. But very much looking forward to dancing in the streets with you all.
Is this with or without video cameras?
Well, people are free to record and put things on the internet.
I know, that's what I'm thinking. I'll be dancing behind you. How's that?
I don't know. I don't know if you can hide behind me. We'll see.
I only dance at Swearing's Inn.
Which you did, and we have that on video.
This is going to be council conversations for like the next 3 months. We're going to be like feeling all super cooped up and just talk about how cool the summer is going to be, right?
Then we're going to start negotiating if we can move the start date back into spring. Just like try to just get 1 week at a time, as much as we can get.
I heard at least 8, and I thought, what can we do to bring that number up? Poor Aaron right now.
We can make it super successful.
Yep.
Bring money and people into the community. So
I think people are going to show up for this.
Well, I just remember how successful that craft market was, and how because we were able to connect to like a larger sort of culture of craft markets, and that they exist in lots of different communities. People kind of treat them like, I don't know if you've ever done like a yarn shop hop, where you just go from one to another, but people go like in those craft market circuits, they'll go from one and then up to Bothell and then down to Renton or wherever it's being held. And I see it sort of having that type of a benefit. And I very much just would like to see the craft markets return as well and have more opportunities to do that. Especially if we can like set them up maybe around our pop-up shops and just sort of put the pop-up shops in the context of a craft market, could be fun.
All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have anything left to say. If there are no objections, I will call the meeting done. All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Good night.